Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. There is a dark and foreboding place where few men dare tread, and where those who do speak with indecipherable accents. A death trap of murderous creatures, venomous insects, man-eating reptiles, and poisoned plants that seek nothing more than your complete destruction, and which will hunt you to the ends of the earth to ensure your annihilation. There's no way that such a hellish, fiendish nexus of despair and agony could exist. Well, it does. And that place is none other than the continent of Australia. But Australia, some say, not the home of kangaroos and Bindi Irwin, not the magical merry land of Foster's beer fountains, koalas, and bluey. Thou fool. Thou art deceived by dark conjurers, whose words are as laced with poison as your beloved koala's eucalyptus leaves. Australia is a place that leaves none but the strongest alive. Be it intelligently designed cruelty or just dumb luck, Australia has the largest concentration of venomous, aggressive, and black-hearted creatures on Earth. Whoever came up with the concept of Australia was inflicted with the madness of Nietzsche and the megalomania of Napoleon. But you know what? Rampaging wilderness bent on exterminating all life on Earth is also truly badass. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am here with a special co-host today, Dr. Pat Larish, my usual partner on these things. She is traveling with her students to an undisclosed location that she will reveal when she gets back, but she is off having fun and hopefully having a great time on her trip. But today I am here with a guy who will be new to you as the listeners, but he has been part of this project since the beginning. And in fact, the entire Badass of the Week podcast idea was his idea, so that he is created and made reality and gets to listen to every week. So I want to introduce Andrew Jacobs. He is the producer for our show and somebody we've been working with for, 2 years now, Andrew, on this project?
Yeah, I think so. I was going to say long-time listener, first-time caller. Excited to be here and chat badasses. And, I don't think I can fill Pat's shoes, but I'm wearing a different set of shoes.
Yes.
So we'll see how,
Let's see how that works.
I'm wearing sneakers. But yeah, this should be fun. Like, it's a whole different thing just listening to these episodes and producing them. And now, talking on one of them is we'll see if I'm up to the task.
It's a totally different thing. One thing that I learned starting to do these podcasts is that there are certain things that podcasters do effortlessly that actually are much more difficult than you'd think. Like, when I started doing interviews on here, I was like, there's a whole skill set here that I didn't practice or prepare for or anything. I just assumed it would be easy because podcasters make it sound easy. It's a whole different world.
Well, but it's funny. Like, those are things like I'm thinking about all the time, but actually implementing them in me talking.
Yes, it's different.
It's a different thing. I've produced many hours of podcasts, and I think this is. I appeared briefly for about 5 seconds on one about 4 years ago, and this is my follow up. This is the second one.
All right. Well, welcome, and I think we're gonna have some fun with this because Pat is the historian, and today we're gonna talk very loosely about history, but we are gonna talk about something we haven't really covered before. When we started Badass, we wanted to do all kinds of different stuff, mythology, folklore, historical figures, and today we're gonna revisit something I posted. It's an article that went up on my website in maybe the first year of the website. I posted an article about literally the continent of Australia and all of the crazy, murderous, killing, stinging, venomous things that live there, and how how it's badass because it's kind of a place where that is always trying to kill you.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's worth noting that one of our most popular episodes and fun episodes that we did was North Sentinel Island.
Yeah.
And so like apparently people like location-based badass episodes.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So let's do it again.
And we did interview Tiny Caesar for the Elizabeth Bathory episode. She's Australian, so that's another Australian connection we have. Yes. Have you ever been to Australia?
You know, I have not been to Australia. I think the closest I got to Australia was Fiji. So it's like, I feel like that's like 2/3 of the way to Australia. It's sort of like their Hawaii.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Australians there, so I haven't made it all the way. But I've heard very good things from friends who've gone, and they all survived. You know, so yes. That's a plus.
Yeah, it's like, you know, we're gonna talk about the crazy wildlife of Australia, but you know, in terms of places in the world that are trying to kill you, most venomous things generally are in like Australia or Brazil. You know, there's a lot of venomous snakes and all. The Brazilian stuff is crazy as well, but it's not where people live. And I assume this is kind of what Australia is like as well. The places where the snakes and the fish and the trees and the bugs can kill you are not places that people generally want to live. And, you know,
I think
you have
Brazil
to go seek them out.
Brazil has a whole snake island, doesn't it?
Yes, they have a whole island of snakes. You're not allowed to go there because the island is completely overrun with snakes.
that I feel like we need a bonus episode on that one.
Yes, we probably do actually. Yeah, I was close to it, but I've never been. I've never seen it. I'm not, you know.
So have you been to Australia?
No, never. It's similar to. I went to French Polynesia, like Tahiti, which is I think on the Australian tectonic plate, but I've never been. It's one of I really want to go because it's one of the few continents I haven't traveled to so far. So I want to get out there and visit it, but I haven't gone yet. I've done a lot of reading about it, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is all of the crazy wildlife and murderous things that live on this continent that are extremely dangerous and can kill you in a variety of fun and interesting ways.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's do it.
All right. So we are going to take a really quick commercial break. And when we get back, we are going to talk a little bit about the history of Australia and then get into some of the weird and wild things on the island that will try to kill you. So getting into talking about Australia, one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is the size of the country. It is extremely large. You think, you know, it doesn't look that big on a map sometimes, or you think because of the projections on the globe or the map or whatever, maybe it's not that big, but it's the 6th largest country in the world. The country is also a continent. That's not common. It's got this huge biodiversity. Because it's an island, all this stuff lives on the island. All these different animals and creatures grow up there without outside forces coming in. But Australia is about the size of the lower 48 U.S. states. It's got kind of the diversity of the U.S. also. You got rainforest, desert, grasslands, mountains, rivers. Off the coast, you have the Great Barrier Reef, which has a huge amount of diversity. So there's a lot of like endemic animals and plants and fish and insects and things that you don't see anywhere else.
So it's like a 4-hour flight from one end of Australia, 4.5 hour, 5-hour flight from what? Like New York to LA, same thing.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, people live on Perth, which is on the West Coast, but most people now live in the Southeast. So it's interesting because the population of Australia is like 26 million people, which is like somewhere between Florida and Texas. So it's less people than Texas, but it's the size of the continental US. And 90% of those people live in cities on the coast and generally in the Southeast. But when you say like the flights, yeah, it's a long flight over to Perth. There's a train that goes through the center of the continent. It's one of these sleep on the train for several days kind of journeys. But, you know, there's nothing there.
I mean, considering the amount of apparently deadly things that we're going to talk about in Australia, the only way they can survive is by living in cities, you know.
That's true. That's true. And the other way around too, right? If you wanted to colonize one of these areas that had all these things, you have to exterminate the species before you can live there, because otherwise it's going to really, really suck for you. anyway, this diversity was really interesting to the Europeans when they first landed. So the continent of Australia was discovered during James Cook's first voyage in the late 18th century. Captain Cook traveled on his journey. He circumnavigated the globe. He went to Brazil, Tahiti, New Zealand, and Australia. Got out and he kind of discovered Australia. He discovered that there were actually a bunch of people that had already discovered Australia hundreds, if not thousands of years before him and were already living there, but they didn't write any history down. So
as it goes.
Right. And so, but he was traveling with a guy named Sir Joseph Banks, who was a botany aficionado. He was there with a Swedish guy named Dr. Daniel Solander, who was a student of Carl Linnaeus, who was an original person who did taxonomy, came up with the idea of giving Latin names to different species. And these guys were kind of amazed at all of the crazy stuff that lived on this island, and they started trying to document it. I always think, for Joseph Banks, I always kind of think of the doctor character from Master and Commander, like that guy. That's the vibe I get for him. Banks and Solander, they were so obsessed with this that they called the spot where they'd landed, they named it Botany Bay. I think it was originally Botanist's Bay, and then it became Botany Bay. They documented all these new species. They came back, they circumnavigated the globe. They discovered things like eucalyptus and acacia and stuff that's, on shampoo bottles now, but we'd never heard of in 1768.
And what kind of, just out of curiosity, like when you're talking about the crazy animals that they saw, that they were like, whoa, I mean, like, and do we have any specifics on that? Because I'm just thinking, if you had never seen a kangaroo before, and then you saw one for the first time, you're gonna like, what the F is
what
that?
the hell is
like,
this? Yeah, that is exactly what there's a drawing of a kangaroo, and they came up with the word, like Joseph Banks is the guy who came up with the name kangaroo for the thing.
That's definitely a completely made up word.
Yeah, it's a totally made up word. It has no like basis in like anything else. You're just like, that's a kangaroo. And they're crazy. I don't know if you have seen any like footage of kangaroos in action, but they're like 5 to 6 feet tall. They jump, they kick, they're like aggressive. I saw one video where like there was like this guy's dog went after a kangaroo, and the kangaroo grabbed it with his hands and tried to drown the dog in like like a body of water. Like, dang.
And they've got pockets that they carry their babies around in.
That's
it's
weird.
Very weird stuff.
Yes. This is all weird stuff that we don't see anywhere else. So yeah, they were documenting things like kangaroos and koala bears, which koala bears live in.
They're cute.
They're cute, but they live in poisonous trees, and that you can't eat the leaves or you'll die or get extremely sick. And I learned recently that in Australia, they call them drop bears because the koalas eat the eucalyptus and they get super high and then they fall out of the tree. They pass out and fall out of the tree. And sometimes they die from this. Yeah.
Nature.
Yeah. Just evolution in action.
Yeah.
Anyway, they document all this stuff. They come back. They're kind of celebrities overnight for having made all of these, discovered hundreds of new species of plant and animal. And then Joseph Banks becomes the president of the Royal Society for 40 years, which is this big society for naturalists and botanists and stuff. And he also becomes a big part of he becomes like the Australia expert for England and for the Queen and all that. He actually is a big part of the decision to turn Botanist's Bay into, of course, a penal colony.
Great.
which is how Australia was colonized.
So yeah, I mean, between 1788 and 1868, apparently more than 162,000 convicts were sent to Australia, which I think, and I mean, we're talking about like, the people that England and Ireland and Scotland didn't really want. Thieves, con men, whatever. I'm sure murderers, rapists, killers,
debtors too, because you could like go to jail for
who
like
just owed money.
Yeah, you could go to jail for that.
That was a crime. Definitely prostitutes, sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the proper term for them back then was.
I'm sure it's not repeatable on this podcast.
So that's who they sent to Australia. And so I think, by the way, it's worth thinking about the results of that today. Think about who's coming from Australia when you think about Australia. The Hemsworth brothers, right? Mel Gibson, Russell Crowe, Margot Robbie, Nicole Kidman. Like, these are the people, that's what I'm like. I think what in my mind, what it is like England sent all the kind of like some of the fun people to Australia, which explains a lot about Australia and the Australians if you've ever met them. They are very fun people.
Yes, exactly, and it's like you said, like the British just like, but amazing. Yeah, it's totally badass, right? We just sent all of our like. I'm hesitant to say it's like hell on earth, but I mean that in the way that like famous writers are like, if I go to hell, I'll have more fun, right? Like, I don't want to go to heaven with all these boring religious people. yeah, exactly.
Well, and now think of the flip side of that coin is think about the people who got sent to America. The Pilgrims, right. The Puritans. Boring. There's a reason why they, I think England didn't want them either. They were like, these people are boring. Feel free to go to the United States.
Yeah, they were like, you're religious maniacs. You got to get out of here. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, feel free to go to the New World.
Yeah.
Prisoners, you're going over there. So I guess England was just a bunch of sort of middling, non-criminal, non-super boring people. Australia got the fun. US got the,
The British got the stiff upper lip, right? Don't cause any trouble.
So here we are, hundreds of years later, and Australians are way better looking than Americans. That's what it is. That's what we're stuck with.
The amazing thing to me is that the penal colony starts in the 1780s, and the first voyage of Captain Cook returns in 1771. So it was literally like the second they got back, they had the idea like, you know what? This would be an awesome place to just put all these people. We can empty our prisons, put them all on a boat and drag them out here. It sounds like the plot to a science fiction story or something, right? Like, we're just going to put all of our prisoners on a boat and send them to this new land, this new world, this new...
It's kind of odd, though. It's really far.
Super far.
They could have just like settled on like, I don't know, Iceland or something, a little closer.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get rid of them a little more quickly. Going to Australia, I mean, I don't know how long that journey took, but that's a long way to be on a ship full of apparently criminals and prisoners. But again, might have been a good time.
They had to ship them as far away as possible. And, I like to joke that it's because like only the strongest and toughest and most like violent of the people of England could survive in this land.
Sure.
Only the toughest could make it in Australia, so they had to send their toughest guys to settle the area. And here's the weird thing is that Australia is still part of the Commonwealth. So like it was settled by convicts, yet they are still loyal to the country that put them there. It's weird, right?
It's kind of a good deal, I guess.
Yeah.
You did some bad stuff in England, and it's like, well, you're going to be free. It's just you're going to be free way over there.
Yes.
It's better than, I don't know what some of the alternatives are. I don't know, like, the gulag in Siberia.
That's very true, huh? It's better than the gulags, although it's not as good as Tahiti.
True. There are other islands that might have been nice to land on.
But so these people started to kind of carve out a civilization there, and now they're Australia has a very rich and colorful history, and so I'm going to transition that into these tough people. They have to put up with some tough wildlife that is as tough as the people that live there, and I kind of want to kind of get into some of the wildlife that is just these things are crazy. But
sure.
Here's how I think I want to do this. So famously, at least in the US, the Australians are famous here for coming up with funny names for things. So, for instance, a mozzie is a mosquito, which I think might actually be the deadliest creature in human history. They have a bird that they call the bin chicken, like a garbage chicken. It's the Australian white ibis, which is like an ibis bird, like a white ibis bird. It's closely related. I love this. It's closely related to the African sacred ibis, which was considered like a holy creature of the Egyptian god Thoth. But it has proliferated so much in Australia that now it just eats out of garbage cans, and they call it the bin chicken, which I think is funny.
All right. Great.
Yeah. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to say the colloquial Australian name for and they're usually like fairly cute sounding, for something that is horrifying real creature that lives on this continent. And I want you to try to guess what type of animal it is.
All right, let's do this.
All right. So we'll start with the sea wasp.
The sea wasp. I mean, it's got to be in the ocean. Let's start with that. So I'm on my way. The sea wasps, maybe is that, but it's got to be like small. I'm guessing it's like a deadly seahorse.
Close. It's the box jellyfish, which is quite possibly the most venomous creature on Earth of any type, which is a jellyfish it has 10-foot long tentacles. And it's basically clear, so it's almost invisible when it's in the water. But if you touch any part of those 10-foot long tentacles, they possess these explosive cells that fire darts of venom that puts you in excruciating pain, followed by cardiac arrest within 2 to 5 minutes, if not treated immediately.
All right. All right. So got that, listeners. Don't go swimming in Australia. Yes. That's lesson number one.
That will be a continuing theme here. The box jellyfish has enough venom to kill 60 adult humans in one jellyfish. Could kill 60 people. It has killed somewhere between like 60 and 80 people, like confirmed over since we've been keeping. They actually have various beaches in Australia that have these creatures around. They'll put jellyfish nets around the beach swimming area so they don't get in there. But then if they do, they also keep these jars of vinegar on the beach, because I guess you can splash vinegar on the sting. If you can get it within 2 to 5 minutes, you don't have a heart attack.
Yeah. I imagine it's like that scene from Jaws or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and they're like jellyfish out of the water.
Yeah. There's a the famous the big scary box jellyfish is the I'm not even going to try to say the Latin of it, but there's also a smaller version of it, the Irukandji box jellyfish, which the thing is only a centimeter long, so it's really, really, really tiny. It's less fatal, but not entirely non-fatal.
It's child size.
Yeah, it's the mini.
Kill your kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right. So, how about Itchy Jack?
Itchy Jack,
which Google, when I was Googling this, kept trying to autocorrect to Itchy Jock. I think I'm gonna get like Amazon ads for like itch powder for the next like 6 months now.
Now that we're talking about it, I'm gonna get that too.
Great.
Clearly.
It's probably gonna be the podcast ads for this episode as well.
Itchy Jack is some kind of furry little mouse that bites you. I don't know. I have no idea. It sounds cute, but
it's not. It's the Australian jumper ant. So it's like about a half-inch long ant with a black body and orange pincers that literally like if it sees people coming, it will climb trees and wait to jump down on you and bite you.
It's targeting people. Yeah, they guard their nests, and if they see things come, they literally they guard the nest, and if they see anybody get close to it, they attack. They don't they bite you with their pincers, but they have a stinger in their tail like a bee, and they're responsible for 90% of Australia's anaphylactic emergency shock cases. Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
They're so prevalent. Like, even if you don't go into anaphylactic shock, the bites are like extremely painful and they swell up for days. And apparently they're like, it's like one of the most painful ant bites you can get. And these things live everywhere, to the point where major hospitals in major population centers have venom immunotherapy programs where you can go and get shots every so often so that you won't go into shock if one of these things bites you.
Well, that's cool.
It's cool, but this is the kind of country where this is the thing you have to do.
All right. Well, lesson number 2: don't walk under trees in Australia. All right. Let's keep this going.
All right, we'll keep this going. Well, this one maybe is a little bit of a giveaway with the name, but it's called the Sydney funnel web.
All right, that's definitely a spider.
It's definitely a spider.
That's definitely a
I kept looking for a funny nickname. I'm sure somebody calls them like, this is a munchie or whatever, but like nothing for that. I couldn't do it. But I wanted to talk about it because this thing is the world's most venomous spider.
All right.
And, now we're not going in the water. We're not walking under trees, but this thing comes into your house. It lives outside Sydney, and when it gets like a little cold outside, or when it's like mating season, it's not a web, like, the females dig holes. They're trapdoor spiders. They dig holes and critters fall in there and they bite them and kill them. But the males go around to find the layers of the females. Generally, they end up in your shoes and gloves and in plants and in your house and your garage and stuff. They're roughly 4 inches from foot tip to foot tip, from like toe to toe across. Although there was
4 inches. That's like hand size.
Yeah. Right. There was one that was
small hand size.
Yeah. They can be that big. That's like a pretty big one. They bite so strongly that it can go through fingernails.
Oh God.
And if you get bit by it, you can have a permanent open sore from this for the rest of your life.
Jeez.
It's messed up, right? And they're extremely, because they're like out there trying to get laid or whatever, like they're extremely like aggro. Like they'll chase you and they'll keep biting you. And sometimes they'll grab on and hold on, and you have to like get it off you because it will like be holding on. And after you're bit, you have like 15 minutes. You'll start getting sick, vomiting, frothing at the mouth. You have muscle spasms, then you die. And so you have to have somebody inject you with 2 vials of anti-venom within 15 minutes of being stung.
So they're a bunch of incels.
Yes. Angry, raging, angry, raging. Like this was not a date, and I'm angry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right.
Yeah,
well, okay.
yeah.
So lesson number 3, let's say,
check your shoes.
Check your shoes. Keep your house super cold so that they don't come inside to warm up. Maybe just lots of air conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have an anti-venom now, but they didn't until like the 1980s. And the only way to get it is from milking the venom from the spiders, from a live spider.
That sounds like a great job.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Who's the spider milker?
Yes.
Hold on. I'm just going to look that up on LinkedIn. Spider milker.
Spider milker.
Like, right? Spider milker. It doesn't exist. There's no one. Probably some kind of veterinarian, I suppose. I don't know.
All right, let's do one more. This one's called the Gimpy Gimpy.
The Gimpy Gimpy.
Gimpy Gimpy. I think I'm saying that correctly. I watched a YouTube video on how to pronounce it.
The Gimpy Gimpy. I mean, what the heck would a Gimpy Gimpy be? It's like some kind of animal with a funky limp. Like a 3-legged dingo. I don't know.
No, it's called the suicide plant or the Australian stinging tree.
Oh.
So there are 6 different types of stinging trees in Australia, but the Gimpy Gimpy is the worst one. You never heard of venomous trees before, but they exist in Australia because that's what we're talking about here.
And how does it sting you exactly? How does this work?
Well, you walk into it or you touch it by accident. You don't realize what you're looking at. It just looks like there's like slight little like spines on it, but it doesn't look that threatening. It just looks like it's something you would definitely just brush past if you saw it in the wild. And it has these little spines that are not particularly big, but they snap off and they inject you with some kind of horrible venom that apparently leaves you in extreme pain for days. So
okay.
yeah, there is a severe burn when they touch you. The burn increases in pain for the next 30 to 40 minutes, and then it stays at that level for days. There was a woman who was a researcher for this, and she described it as, quote, the worst pain you can imagine, like being burnt with hot acid and electrocuted at the same time.
All right. A lot of people had to find that out the hard way.
Yes. People have died from this sting. There was a story of a paratrooper, World War II paratrooper, who was training an Australian soldier. He was during his training, he parachuted and he landed on one, and he ended up being hospitalized for 3 weeks, and he like lost vision for a couple days. Yeah, if you stand close enough to the thing and study it, you can inhale the venom and you get like hives in your lungs and you start sneezing and you get rashes and stuff.
Wow.
It was first documented in 1866 when a guy named A.C. McMillan, he was riding his horse through the brush and one of them stung his horse, and the horse was in like excruciating pain and it died in 2 hours.
All right.
So yeah, this is Australia. Certain agony and death disguised as a little tree.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the lesson here on this one is, once again, don't walk under or near trees. I will say I'm really happy to hear this, though. This is very useful. I have a 4-year-old son who is obsessed with trees and likes to touch them all. And so now I know I just cannot take him to Australia.
Can't take him on that Australia trip. Yeah. Yeah. My son likes that too. My kid's 3, and we were in Whistler, Canada, which weirdly is completely full of Australian people. They come up there to go skiing because it's you go from Canada to Australia, it's not so bad, and there's great skiing there. But yeah, I was trying to kill like 45 minutes with him, and I was like, "What do you want to do, buddy?" And he's like, "I want to go kick a tree." I was like, "Cool, man, go for it. Have fun. We can kick trees."
All right. Well, maybe I've got one for you then.
Cool.
They call these salties.
Salties. Let's see. What would a salty be? It sounds like a food, honestly. It sounds like a cracker, but let's see. I'm gonna guess a salty is I'm gonna guess it's a species of bird.
No, saltwater crocodile.
Oh,
which incidentally can also be in the freshwater. So
great.
It's in both. Don't go swimming anywhere. Now,
freshwater, saltwater, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's just there. And now here's the thing. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people, when you think about it, that Australia is famous somewhat for crocodiles because Crocodile Dundee, right?
Yeah, and Steve Irwin.
And Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, right? But it's not the alligator, alligator Dundee or alligator hunter. It's the crocodile hunter and Crocodile Dundee. And I don't think people realize the exact real difference between the two things. Like, I think we have a pretty sizable American audience on this thing here. And a lot of folks have probably seen alligators, whether at the zoo or in their backyard if you're living in Florida. Your average alligator, grows up to be like 8 feet long, sort of. That's a pretty sizable alligator.
So I grew up in Florida, and yeah, they're like 6 to 8 feet. They're not that weird, but like it's not that scary to see one in real life. I mean, it is. You got to just stay away, and there's certain times you can't go in the water at like dawn or dusk because that's where they, that's when they feed. But there's like, you kind of grow up in Florida learning the basics. But yeah, Florida alligators like 6 to 8 feet generally.
Yeah, saltwater crocodiles can grow up to be about like 23 feet long.
Oh God.
Yeah,
It's more than 3 alligators combined.
Yes. significant size difference.
I think the biggest gator I ever saw was like 10 feet, and that was like at the zoo that the Seminole Indian tribe had. That was a monster, right?
Chill and nice and fat, and it just got to keep growing because I think they just
behind a fence. With a trench and like a fence between me and him.
Yeah. So from what I understand about saltwater crocodiles is, of course, they're predators, but they're extremely predatory and will stalk animals and victims left and right, all over the place. And I remember reading something about them learning patterns. Like if there was someone who took a specific path every day from here to there, the saltwater crocodiles can learn it. And so there's an incident, a story that I will at least reference here. Here's the headline. Killer crocodile stalked friends of victim for 22 hours. So this story comes from 2003, and apparently let me see if I can paraphrase this here. The story is, and this is in the Independent, as written by Kathy Marks. A saltwater crocodile killed a man in Australia's Northern Territory and then showed off, I'm making hands in quotes, showed off his body in his jaws before circling his two friends for 22 hours.
It's like the Predator.
Yeah. It's like, it killed the friend, then like came up and like showed the body to the friends, and then just waited. And
this should be a horror movie. This should be like,
I mean, 2003, I haven't done enough. It probably already is a horror movie. And we've seen this movie, like pick your random, sharks. I think there's a movie about the bear that had, what's his.
The Shallows is like that with Blake Lively. She gets chased by a shark.
And Liam Neeson fights wolves. This is clearly that.
Lake Placid's the only alligator one I can think of off the top of my head. But
yeah.
And Lake Placid too.
Yeah. So saltwater crocodile. So, people, I think there was a tourist who was killed a few years back, swimming in a place where their tour guide had said it was safe to swim. So the lesson here is, don't swim in Australia in the freshwater or the seawater, and also change up your patterns. Just mix things up, don't be too predictable.
Always assume that you have like a mob hit out on you and you have to go change your routine every day. And there's there's a lot of these things. There's I read numbers somewhere between 100 to 200,000 saltwater crocodiles in Australia.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because they just reproduce like crazy. They used to be endangered, but now they're just out of control. And this isn't even mentioned. So we've got these, saltwater crocodiles, the largest living reptile in the world. Then you've got these box jellyfish. And on top of that, we haven't even mentioned they have great whites in Australia.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean great whites. Yeah.
Right?
Been there, done that.
That's a typical evil killing machine that we've seen before, at least. All right. Well, we should take a quick break and then come back and we'll talk about a couple more of these and then and finish it off. But
I think we have this is a new thing for us, but we actually have a sponsor for this episode.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Australian Airlines.
Yes.
Fly direct from LAX or SFO or from SeaTac.
Yeah.
Direct to Sydney. Offering daily flights. And guess what? Round trip tickets now 50% off because you're not coming back.
Just get it one way. Yeah.
Just get it one way. You're probably not gonna survive.
Okay, welcome back. We are talking about Australian wildlife. And Andrew, I got two more for you. And then we're gonna take it out. But the next one is the coastal taipan.
Coastal taipan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like that's got to be a snake. I mean, we haven't touched snakes. It's got to be a snake. So
I was,
tell me about it.
The best name of them is the Australian death adder, but I felt like that was going to give it away.
That's good, though.
Yeah, 6 of the 10 most venomous snakes in the world live in Australia. And the coastal taipan it's a 6 to 8 foot long snake viper that bites and injects you with poison that kills people. It's not as venomous as the inland taipan, but the inland taipan doesn't live near people. It lives in the middle of nowhere, and if you scare it, it runs away. The coastal taipan lives on the coast near the people, and if it sees people, it charges them and attacks them.
All right.
Yeah, the inland taipan has the venom to kill 100 men. The coastal taipan slightly less, maybe just 50 guys per snake, but it's still extremely dangerous and is responsible for a large portion of the snake bite deaths in Australia, which snake bite deaths in Australia are so common that there is literally a Wikipedia entry for like list of snake bite deaths in Australia.
Wow.
One shout out I want to give on when talking about venomous snakes in Australia is, first off, of course, Stever, when I saw him catch all 10 of them on TV once, but there's a guy named Kevin Budden, and he was 19 years old in 1950 when, nobody had ever captured one of these things alive. You kill it, but nobody had ever captured one alive, and he was determined to try to help find an antitoxin for this because it was killing people all over the place. And so in 1950, he caught one. He was only 19 years old. He caught it, he got it in a bag, and he delivered it to researchers so that they could study it. But in the process, it bit him like 3 times and he died.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But then 2 years after he did that, they made the anti-venom and immediately administered it, and it saved the life of an 11-year-old boy, which I think is an awesome end to his story. But yeah, good work, Kevin.
I mean, there's there must have been there's got to be a better way. First of all, a snake in a bag seems, give me a hard walled container. I don't know.
He caught it with his hands. That was when it bit him. He caught it with
first problem.
Yeah, he caught it with his hands and stuffed it in a bag, and it bit him a couple times. But man with a mission. It worked, but he did die in the process.
Oh, geez. And then I'm sure the researchers were like, "Okay, we have a snake in a bag. What are we going to do now?"
Then you put it in that terrarium. You dump that bag into the terrarium.
I guess there you go. Okay. Well, right. The lesson here is for the coastal taipan,
run away.
Stay off the coast. They're very aggressive. They're angry. Don't go in the water. Don't go on the coast.
No, because they got the inland taipan. The inland taipan is worse. So just don't stay on the ground. Don't stand on the ground. Don't walk into trees. Don't climb a tree. Don't stand on the ground. Don't go in fresh water. Don't go in salt water. Don't go in your house.
Keep your houses really cold.
Yes.
Keep the spiders out. All right.
I'm going to do the last one I'm going to give you is called the crown of thorns.
Ooh. That crown of thorns. Let me think about this. Ooh. Sounds like, it sounds painful. Let's start with that.
It is.
I'm guessing it's a plant of some kind that you accidentally walk your head into. Yeah.
It's a starfish.
Oh, okay.
That is very pointy. It camouflages itself to look like the ground.
Okay.
And you step on it, and it injects you with these little thorns that stick out of the thing, which one of two things happen. First off, it's extremely painful, and you start, you get nausea immediately. You swell up. Everything's terrible.
It's like a Lego,
right?
On the a stray Lego on the floor that you step on. It's a little worse.
So one of two things happens here. First possibility is that you just start bleeding, and it has injected you with some kind of venom that makes you keep bleeding. So you just keep on bleeding until you get some sort of professional help to stop you from bleeding. The other thing that could happen is that the thorn embeds in your foot, and the only way to remove it is with surgery.
Okay.
So that's bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that big, and it camouflages. Kind of like the blue-ringed octopus, which also camouflages. It's like 5 inches long. and the LD50 of its venom, as in like the amount that will kill 50% of test subjects, is so high that a single dose could kill 20 people. So these are the things that you can step on by accident in the water in Australia that will basically kill you immediately or make you wish you were dead.
Yeah, so the lesson here is check your shoes for spiders, the funnel spider, and then once they're clear, make sure you wear your shoes if you're crazy enough to go into the water.
Yes.
So that you don't step on a crown of thorns.
Yes, ankle deep water is also dangerous here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay, great. Love it.
I just want to end this by talking about one of the more nefarious creatures in Australia that really doesn't get enough credit for being so. I want to talk about the platypus. Can you picture a platypus right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a duck-billed, weird.
Yeah, he's like fuzzy. He's duck-billed.
It's like a half duck, half something else. Cute animal, probably in a bunch of Disney movies.
Yeah, he lays eggs. He's one of the only mammals that lays eggs. That's weird. Yeah, he's a cute little guy. But he is a deceiver because he lulls you into a false sense of security because he's weird looking and fuzzy and kind of looks like some kind of genetic mistake. But this is Australia. And of course, he has neurotoxic spurs on his feet that don't directly kill humans most of the time. But
most of the time,
right? But are extremely painful. And not only is the sting extremely painful, but the injection also causes humans to suffer hyperalgesia, which is a clinical hypersensitivity to any sensation of pain for weeks or months after the sting. So not only does his sting hurt, but it makes every other sensation of pain like double painful. For like a month.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, they put him on their money in Australia.
Great.
Yes. So Australia is full of psychotic, cold-blooded animal and plant and wildlife and insect murderers.
And so what, out of curiosity, maybe you know, what does Darwin have to say about this? Why is everything in Australia so deadly? What's the story?
Some of it's weird. So the funnel web spider is like extremely deadly to humans and monkeys. But if it stings your dog, if your dog is bit by a funnel web spider, it's fine. It shakes the venom off. Like it's just a weird adaptation that this thing was designed to like kill monkeys and certain types of insects. And that particular blend of venom really, really kills humans. So yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
Like a kind of a closed ecosystem generates weird stuff. It's a continent that didn't have much contact with the outside world for thousands of years. And it's interesting. Like, they are kind of susceptible to outside stuff, though. So Australia's having a big problem right now with bufo toads, like those cane toads that get out there. And, somebody brought a pet frog to Australia and it got out and it
was Bart Simpson.
Right.
I saw that. I saw that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. So it's weird, but that's Australia, right?
It's an interesting idea that maybe that some of what makes it so deadly is that, the folks like us or whoever are just not used to it. Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Right. And it works both ways that you can expose that to stuff that it's not used to and it'll mess it up. Right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, now after all this, I'm excited to not go to Australia anytime soon.
No, I'd like to go. I mean, it is like a rampaging, hellscape full of killer things, but rampaging hellscapes are pretty badass. And so I definitely think it's badass. I definitely want to go. My dad used to own a bar called Botany Bay, and he was super into Australian history, and there was a really cool place that they had pool tables and they'd play Aussie rules football games, and all these Australian guys would come in and hang out. It was super fun, and my dad never got to visit Botany Bay, but I'd love to go see it one day. It's pretty close to Sydney, and I think it'd be fun. There's also like cool parts to Australia. I don't want to just kind of characterize the entire continent as a Mad Max hellscape, post-apocalyptic wasteland. I did hear one of my friends One of the guys at my dad's bar told me once that you could do, they have like live action Mario Kart there. Like you and your friends can go and rent go-karts and like throw turtle shells at each other and drive around on like the streets of whatever town this was, Melbourne or Sydney or something.
I mean, that sounds like something a bunch of descendants of criminals would do. So,
it's fine.
They're having some fun. Maybe it's a little dangerous. They're probably real turtle shells, or something.
And you're probably driving real go-karts on the road with actual cars, like SUVs and stuff.
Yeah. No, I think, we haven't talked about it, but I might just go to New Zealand, their neighbor, which seems much more friendly. I haven't heard about anything deadly over there. So that's where I'm going.
Xena, warrior princess there.
Perfect. So Air New Zealand, that's going to be our next sponsor.
You don't get to check the continent off until you set foot on the continent. So that's a bucket list for me. Although New Zealand, one thing I will say about New Zealand is you produced the podcast on the Resolute, that ship that blew up the cruise ship that took out the Venezuelan warship. They offer cruises out of New Zealand now. They've been reflagged as the Heritage Adventurer. They're based in some New Zealand company. I've been wanting to go on that boat because I was like, I think that would be a fun trip. Of course. And they do cruises where you start in New Zealand and you do some stops in Australia. So maybe that's the solution.
Oh, there you go. Badass boat from a badass continent. Yeah, cool.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you all, as always, for listening to us. We do want to remind you guys to like and subscribe to our show. Send us emails, tell your friends about it, tell your enemies about it, tell all of your Australian friends about it so that they can write us angry messages about how much they didn't like this episode, because we love
you, Australia. We love you guys.
We do, but also any kind of engagement is good for our show, so that's fine.
Even negative engagement. All right. Well, thank you for having me, Ben. And, I have a feeling I'll be back.
Yeah, we'll see Andrew again in the future, but I think we'll have Pat back next week. And thank you guys so much, as always, for listening. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are Andrew Jacobs, me, Pat Larish, and my co-host, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and Ben. Story editing is by Ian Jacobs, Brandon Phibbs. Mixing and music and sound design is by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeart. Badass of the Week is based on the website badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions, ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and your enemies if you want, as we'll be back next week with another one. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.